Hello, good morning, all of you. We are a little sorry that the day has started at 8:30 and we have more than 431 attendees in MS Teams and about 200 in Facebook and around 200 plus in the YouTube streaming. And all of you, very good morning from CSIR NEAST, and then the number of people will increase. And today we have a very interesting session, and four lectures will be there. The first lecture will be a young scientist from US, Dr. Preeti Badrinarayan, and she will be talking about the exploring drug discovery through computational microscope. And then we have two partners. One is Royal Society of Chemistry, which is a world well-known organization, and the second is DBT India Alliance. And the fourth lecture is by two young scientists who are working in CSIR NEAST, Dr. Himakshi Sharma and Lijo John, where they will be describing you the efforts of the Indian government to have a hackathon on drug discovery and how one can use the computational approaches to discover new drugs. With this, I wish you a very successful day, and most of you will be worried about who will be your mentors, what is the program, how exactly we are going to be connected. These are very important questions which we need to find answers, and we found some answers. We are exploring for some more answers, but be assured that each one of you will be connected by the end of the day. If you have any problems, please put it in the Facebook or whatever, and our people will get back to you. Please be patient. Watch our website, which will give you the updates from 4 p.m. onwards. And after these 4 lectures, you will have an orientation of what is the way forward and how the mentors are allocated. They will be displayed in the website, as well as we are trying to create a large number of WhatsApp groups. Personally, I am very unhappy that we have to use an app that is not made in India. But it is very important to do something. So we are using WhatsApp, and we will continue to use it till we find out another alternative approach. And I also request you to understand that we are in a country which is developing. Power cuts are not abnormal here. Internet disconnections are very common in Northeast, and there are a large number of days where we had to live without internet because our NKN connection is cut. So there is a lot of uncertainty which puts some brakes in our enthusiasm to connect to the most eminent people all over the world. Because if I ask a Nobel laureate to come and then give a talk, and at that particular point of time, I cannot even contact him because there is no internet and there is no power, it's very difficult to describe. So we are trying to find out very effective alternatives of how we will be able to sustain this activity of connecting to more than 15,000 students and mentors, and hopefully this will be a unique exercise. I need all of you to give your best to make this program a grand success. I thank you, and then I will ask Dr. Jatin Kalita, the head Research Planning and Business Development, to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Jatin.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to one and all the CSIR SRTP participants. Good morning to all the CSIR SRTP participants, mentors, experts, and Director CSIR NEAST, Dr. G. Narahari Sastry, and Dr. P.T. Badrinarayan. Today is the second day of CSIR SRTP orientation program, and we have today with us Dr. Preeti Badrinarayan based at USA. Dr. Preeti Badrinarayan is presently at the University of California, San Diego, USA. Dr. Badrinarayan has done her PhD at CSIR IICT under the guidance of Dr. Narahari Shastri, after which she moved to CSIR IMTech Chandigarh. She has been awarded with the prestigious DBT Welcome Trust Early Career Grant, which is being hosted by CSIR IMTech Chandigarh. She is also a recipient of the DST Women Scientist Grant, Fulbright Postdoctoral Fellowship, and grant by the National Science Foundation, USA, for the use of Anton 2, the specialized supercomputer. The main focus of her research is to study the activation mechanisms, allostery, and protein-protein interaction networks to understand the regulation of kinases in cancer and develop targeted therapies. She has over a decade of experience in industry, research, and academia. Dr. Preeti will be delivering a talk on an important topic, exploring drug discovery through a computational microscope. Hope that our participant will be highly benefited by her talk. Now I hand over the floor to Dr. Preeti. Dr. Preeti, please.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. It's very nice to be interacting with all of y'all as part of this CSIR Summer Research Training Program 2020. At the onset, I would like to give a big shout out to CSIR, Dr. Narahari Shastri, as well as the entire team for creating this platform, which has enabled all of us to connect and innovate. So coming to the topic of innovation, during this time of pandemic, one of the pressing issues for innovation is drug discovery. One need not always look for drug discovery during a pandemic for a virus. We also see that the immunity is down and the cure is necessary for different diseases as well. So today I would like to take you on a voyage of drug discovery, the different methods that are used, and the methods that I use, and over the period of time, how I ventured into this path. So for a disease and to get a cure or to design a drug, there are different methods used. Like some people use chemical synthesis, or some try to extract a drug from natural compounds and test it, while some try to use assays or NMR, or people try to mimic the, in case of cancer, like I have given an example of cancer here. So people try to mimic it in a mouse model to study exactly how it works in vivo. Likewise, people try to see through images. Imaging is a very upcoming field where you try to see the structure not only through X-ray but through cryo-EM and different microscopy techniques. And one important role played in drug discovery is by microbiology, wherein you try to study the details of the cell through a microscope. And coming to today's topic, the area in which I am interested in is computational drug discovery. If seen, all these different methods and all these different strategies are all interconnected. They are all circulating around the same common agenda, which is to find a cure for a particular disease. So today I would like to take you through a journey how I, as a microbiologist, having done a post-graduation in microbiology, ventured and explored the field of drug discovery through a computational microscope by studying the protein structure, or through ligand-based drug design, or by studying the different conformational changes that occur in a protein using molecular dynamic simulations, or using bioinformatics and chemoinformatics techniques, and generating fingerprints to study a large scale data, or to study sequence doing a sequence analysis, or as of now, where I'm using artificial intelligence and machine learning to handle the big data and to understand the patterns that get generated from a experiment. So let's begin. The structure that I showed you in the previous slide was that of a kinase. I work in a field where I study different aspects of kinase, and I try to understand how the kinase regulation is linked to cancer. So at the beginning, when I had completed my MSc in microbiology, the only thing I knew was about a protein, that a protein has a structure, a secondary structure, a tertiary structure. Likewise, it's the same in kinase. In kinase, you have this structure, and there is a substrate binding site. And most drug designers, at least 15-20 years back, they tried to design inhibitors for this substrate binding site, which is conserved throughout the kinase, because the kinases are a family which are very similar. So the substrate binding site is very similar. So therefore, if an inhibitor was designed for a kinase B, it would also go and bind to kinase C, D, E as well. So therefore, the specificity was very less. Then people found that, like all proteins undergo conformational changes under physiological conditions. So likewise, kinase also, when the alpha helix and the DFG loop, which are two important elements in kinase, when these undergo rotation, the kinase adopts a conformation called an inactive conformation. And this inactive conformation opens up a allosteric pocket, which is not observed in the active conformation in which the substrate binds. So people started designing inhibitors for this allosteric site, since this allosteric site was not conserved in the kinase. That means it was not similar in all kinases. So therefore, if a allosteric inhibitor was designed for a kinase B, it would go and bind only to kinase B. It would not go and bind to kinase C, D, E, F. But what happened was these allosteric inhibitors didn't display good activity. So there was a need to design an inhibitor which would go and bind to both the substrate binding site as well as the allosteric site. The idea being, the fragment binding to the substrate binding site would bring in efficacy, while those binding to the allosteric site would bring in specificity. So to do so, we came up with a idea that why not do drug repurposing. But drug repurposing could not be done with the entire FDA approved drug, since herein we wanted to design an inhibitor which binds to both these sites. So we went for fragment based drug design and came up with a template wherein we have 3 regions in the template, wherein this first fragment would go and bind to the substrate binding site, and the yellow color fragments would go and bind to the allosteric binding site. And we connected these 2 fragments with a common linker, and we tested this. So if you, as you can see in the picture, the first is a substrate binding inhibitor, which only goes and binds to the substrate binding site, or the ATP site as it is called. Whereas the inhibitor that we designed, here you can see the blue part goes and binds to the ATP binding site, whereas the yellow part goes and binds to the allosteric binding sites. Thus, we were able to bring in both efficacy and specificity. But the problem here was, since the allosteric inhibitors were very less in number, the different inhibitors that we designed were not very diverse. So to bring in diversity and to design more compounds, we opted for virtual screening. Virtual screening is a technique wherein you screen for a wide array of compounds, or a database of compounds, to find the best possible candidates which can go and bind to a particular site in your drug target. But one has to always be wise and smart before doing a virtual screening and do some housekeeping activities, because virtual screening, especially if you involve 3D structures, it takes a lot of time, resource, and we might end up getting false positives. So to make sure that we do not end up getting false positives, we first used a similarity matrix using chemoinformatics, which is nothing but we use this matrix helps you to remove all multiple copies of your compound. Like, we would not want to have multiple copies of the same file in our computer because it makes no sense. One copy is enough. So in the same way, in the first step, we remove the multiple copies of the compounds that were present in one particular database or across several databases. Having done that, we wanted, in the second step, we wanted only those compounds which showed a possibility to go and bind to the two different sites and kinase. To do that, we already had an idea of what are the possible interactions that these fragments use to bind to these two different sites. So we used an interaction filter here and filtered out the compounds in the next step. In the last and final step, when we were sure that we have a good and clean data set, we now ran virtual screening, wherein we screened fragments for both the substrate binding site as well as the allosteric site. And then using these final fragments that we got, which were filtered out after the third step, we used the same technique, the fragment tailoring approach, which we had used earlier. And this time we designed compounds which were more diverse than the previous ones. So while doing this, we realized that the substrate binding site and the allosteric site are not the only two places where the inhibitor can go and bind. The kinase binding site as such, or the kinase as such, is quite diverse enough, and the kinase undergoes so many conformational changes that one can always access different small subpockets in the kinase which are very diverse, which are not similar across the kinome, and use them to bring in specificity. So to do that, we did a study of all the available kinase structures and then divided the kinase active site into a general with the general motifs, and then we mapped the different small subpockets that are found usually in all the kinases. Having done that, we mapped the different interactions that we had observed that the different kinase inhibitors use to bind to the different regions. So these we called as the hotspots. So now we knew that if a kinase inhibitor had to be designed, what are the different regions that they can access, and what are the interactions probably they will be using, and if so that is the case, we can likely find a chemical entity which complements the chemical nature of the residues present in that particular region. So after this, when we were doing this, we had to go through a set of kinase structures, and in most cases we found that the conformation of the kinase was reported wrongly, and there were papers coming out every second month stating that the conformation was not correct. So since we already knew that what are the residues and what are the different motifs that come into play and how they change, and we knew that the non-covalent interactions play a very major role in the conformational transitions in kinase. So based on the distance and angles, we developed a metric which, when used, can give a conformation of kinase. Like if a person has a structure of an unknown kinase or a structure which was modeled using a certain template, and a person doesn't know which conformation that particular kinase is in, one can use this metric and then find out the conformation, whether it's an active conformation or an inactive conformation. While we were doing so, till now, we were only working with the static structures, and we were seeing that there are different X-ray structures deposited in PDB in different conformation of kinase, and we were also studying how the different conformations affect drug binding. So there was a curiosity to see how exactly these conformational changes occur. So to do that, we did a molecular dynamic simulations. The molecular dynamic simulations helped us to understand how the G loop or the A loop or the DFG loop in kinase or the alpha helix, which play an important part, how exactly do they turn? And when we were doing this, the trajectory gives you so many frames, and it is quite impossible to find out what are the different interactions that are involved and what are the different interaction networks that undergo change. So to do that, we generated a molecular interaction fingerprint. Using this, one can easily map the changes in an interaction network in a molecular dynamics trajectory. The reason for doing that was to find out whether a particular inhibitor of kinase uh, causes a conformational change in a kinase, or does the kinase undergo conformational change on its own and the inhibitor just binds to it and locks it in that particular conformation. So while I was doing all these things, my PhD was over, and like when you leave your home, the first thing you have to do is you have to learn how to cook, because you come out of the shelter of your home and your parents. So your PhD is also a similar thing. You come out of the shelter of your PhD supervisor. So I decided that let me not just stick to one kinase or two kinase. Let me start from scratch on a clean white board all over again and study all the kinases and study all possible aspects of kinases, be it sequence, structure, or alignment, or drugs, any possible thing that any possible knowledge of kinase that is available, I studied and then I analyzed. When I was doing so, I realized that there are several databases which are very good, which give you information about sequence, structure, mutations, interactions, or drugs, but these are all in different places. And one major thing that I noticed was none of these provide any analysis of the sequences or analysis of the structures or correlate the analysis between sequence, structure, and interactions. So therefore, based on the study that I had done for 3 or 4 months, I didn't want somebody else to spend the same time. So we at CSIR IMTech initiated a formation of a database, which is also not exactly a database, which is like an online drug discovery workspace for Kinome, wherein we have put in all the data that we have collected. Not only data, we have the analysis of this data, the tools that we have developed, the binaries of the tools that have been that were developed are there in the backend. Likewise, as the project is going on, whatever data we are collecting, we are putting it in the backend. This is soon going to go public. So this work that I started was made possible because of the generous support of Wellcome Trust DBT, India Alliance. And because of this support that I got from Wellcome Trust DBT, I could think to do many things. So while I was doing this, I realized that the cryo-EM came into play. And so we wanted to not only stick to computations, but we had understood that we need, it is drug discovery is an interdependent process, and therefore to study the activation mechanisms of kinases and oncogenic kinases, it is necessary to understand the how the mutations work, to understand the allostery, the dynamics, the interaction.
Madam, you have another 5 minute time.
Okay. So we started with this oncogenic kinases. We could get a cryo-EM structure of this oncogenic kinases. But since you can see that initially everybody had an X-ray crystal structure, which was just the catalytic unit, but we had a very big structure. Therefore, we used supercomputers to carry out the simulation. Since the supercomputer simulations ran for milliseconds, we got different conformations in different frames. And so to handle that data, we did Markov modeling, which is nothing but it tells you, it clusters the different conformations into different nodes. Here, if you can see, these different circles are different nodes, and each circle has similar conformations in it. And these the arrows, they indicate the probability of transitioning between discrete conformations. So having done this, we used Brownian dynamics to understand how the binding occurs to get the rate constants. And then using this, we found out the different possible binding sites. And after finding the different binding sites, we wanted to prioritize it. So using machine learning and artificial intelligence, we converted this data into machine readable format, and then came up with the different possible binding sites, which our experimental collaborators have they are working on it, and they have confirmed and verified the likelihood of using this for designing a drug. So this is a new method that we have used, wherein we have tried to combine Brownian dynamics and classical MD together. And since it's a pandemic and everybody is working on coronavirus, one initiative that has been taken up by Scripps Research Institute in San Diego is wherein, with the availability of the structure, it's a joint effort, community effort, wherein each and every individual, based on their capacity and interest, can contribute. So I thought maybe somebody would be interested in this. And this entire exercise was generously supported by National Science Foundation, Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance, and the Department of Science and Technology. So thank you. This is how I explored the drug discovery world and moved from using a compound microscope to a computational microscope. Thank you.